So today I'd like to take you on a tour about a request from my patients, and I thought I would never have to talk about that topic. It is Ozempic, and for me as a holistic practitioner, as an Ayurvedic doctor, as a yoga therapy practitioner, I find it very hard to speak about certain medication that is definitely not in my field of education. So we have to find out what is interesting for me and my patients when it comes to Ozempic, and also what would be the holistic view and maybe the holistic solution to the problem that is trying to be addressed with Ozempic. So when we look at Ozempic and all drugs that are falling into that treatment range of insulin resistance and GLP-1 inhibitors, so we have to find out what is the cause why people take it, why people want to take it, why my patients even request it. So the utmost information why Ozempic has been prescribed in the first place, it is to treat diabetes 2 that is defined by a very strong insulin resistance. And one had found out that even with these severe cases of diabetes 2, which is the nutrition and lifestyle-induced diabetes, there is still a chance that you could even reduce insulin injections. Because in the case of this severe diabetes 2, there might be the insulin resistance so high that even the injections didn't really work. So that was the indication. So now we see people like Oprah Winfrey or Selena Gomez or other people just losing and shedding weight in enormous amount, particularly before the Met Gala or the Oscars or whatever. So we suddenly found a medication that is very, very potent to treat a life-threatening disease, now turning into a lifestyle drug for the rich and famous or those who can afford. The thing is, still these drugs are under prescription, but they're not paid by the insurance. So that's already quite selective who has access to it. And by a range of €300 minimum for a month dosage, we can easily figure out that still the treatment is for those who have enough money. This is one point, but what is more interesting is what is addressed if you are not taking it for insulin resistance diabetes type 2, but just for weight loss. One thing is, when we look at weight, we have to define what is weight. The first definition of being overweight mostly is according to the BMI, which is the body mass index, which had been developed according to Scottish soldiers ages ago, always male, and we find something that is just defining the relation between height and weight. So there's no definition of female, in particular male, or into particular age groups once they hit the over 20s. So coming from this, we have been exposed to the idea that a certain weight correlates with a certain healthiness and project to longevity. But we have never defined over these years if this weight is coming from muscles, bone mass, or fat. So when people now start taking Ozempic, their scale weight drops. That means this is the weight they see when they look on their scale. And this can be over an amount of 2 years maximum of 17%. So that is normally where it then starts just getting more resistant. But it's also, interestingly enough, the time when people normally get off the drug. But first we look into this, what happens with the 17%. So when we look into overweight and then from there into obesity, we have to see that in case of obesity, there is a hormonal shift in the body that has been disturbing the idea of, am I full? Am I craving more food? And what food am I craving? Because this internal extra body of internal fat starts producing a lot of hunger hormones and a lot of substances that are in our reward system located. So food at some point is not anymore something that is sustaining our life, but it becomes a threat to our longevity by producing internal body fat that then itself starts craving more food. And when I look at the people who normally come to see me, so their food is not so much defined by calories, their food is more defined by nutrition, nutritional value, how much protein, how much fat, and how much extra minerals and vitamins are in the food. But when it comes to this extra internal fat, craving for more food, this severe obesity, this is all out of the window. These people don't really have the chance to make a selective choice for food because that internal hormonal change is really asking for a particular type of food which we consider as not particularly healthy. But it's not so much of a choice. And this is very important when it comes to the mental attitude, why we have also this idea of body shaming when somebody is overweight. And we don't want to go into that we say these people are maybe just not motivated enough or they are not disciplined enough. But to really understand that there's a physical shift inside them that also makes them have poor choices, and the inability of physical movement by the inhibition of physical movement just to the weight alone is another factor. So I think in these cases it would make sense to consider it. But when we look at the mechanism of nutrition and the mechanism of understanding what I put into my body and how I act with my body, then we also have to understand that Ozempic doesn't change that. So once the person comes off the drug, because the side effects of severe nausea, headaches, a feeling of constant fullness or even pancreatitis or constant constipation are so disturbing the normal life that they say, I can't handle this anymore. And also because the food is not tapping anymore in the reward system, there's also not a feeling of reward. So we see a significant number of patients then saying, okay, I might be slimmer now, but the joy and the hunger for life or the juiciness of life, that's also diminished. So from a holistic point of view, we say there is no change in attitude for the better. And what is a life that is defined by scale weight, but not by internal factors of self-improvement or a feeling of connection and a feeling of joy and creativity to express yourself, because a particular drug that is meant to reduce your scale weight reduces, unfortunately, also the joy of life. So is it really an approach to address obesity and overweight? Or shall we just also dive a little bit deeper and also see what it also can do for people who are underweight? Because we know that a lot of people also have the opposite direction to deal with the daily demands of stress, overworking, societal pressures, dissolution of adult life, or severe trauma, that they also reject food. And we see even in this group of people already normal weight or underweight, also a use of Ozempic. And now we can understand maybe from these factors more that the reduction of the intake of food comes with a high price, because it reduces also the intake of minerals, vitamins, protein, and fat. What we should address when it comes to weight regulation and insulin resistance is the intake of carbohydrates, because this is our primary source of energy normally, but it leads in overconsumption to the accumulation of internal body fat. And when we now look into either underweight or overweight, and we're now reducing the nutritional values of food by reducing the food in general, what we produce is a 40% of reduction of muscle mass, and therefore also reduction of bone mass. And these days we are very aware that particularly women after the age of 50 and going into menopause are already losing constantly muscle mass and bone mass. So for these women who are the biggest consumer of Ozempic, it is a complete shot into the face, because this lean muscle mass should have been built up before even considering taking the drug. The idea that with the reduction of muscle mass, of course your scale weight goes down drastically because muscle mass weighs more than fat. So these people look at the scale and say, oh, I lost 10 kg. That's great. No, it's not great, because about 40% of it are lean muscle mass that you probably will not gain back. And when we look into what I said initially, that it also reduces the appetite for life and the joyfulness of movement, then we see that this muscle mass will probably not come back. And so if the muscle mass shrinks, we see a decay in bone density, which leads to more fractures, besides the mental effect. When we have somebody here who already is malnourished, and we reduce even more of the nutrients, and particularly of the minerals and vitamins and secondary substances in food, then we see that this leads into a complete breakdown. So in my eyes, I think it sounds so weird that we need somebody to teach us nutrition, and I'm a nutritionist. And so to understand what are the factors and how we could understand what people want when they take Ozempic, which means they want to reduce fat. But we also know by the intake of proper omega-rich fatty acids, by moving into a more ketogenic lifestyle, we actually see the same effects that Ozempic is giving, means a reduction in hunger, a slower rate of digestion, but it comes with a plus in nutrients. So therefore, I would suggest find your own lifestyle and nutrition choices, opposed to just looking into one direction and finding one solution for a lot of problems. And these problems could be multifactorial. It could be a burnout, it could be just a high demand from outside, it could be a post-traumatic stress disorder that leads to a wrong food decision and leads to wrong choices. But don't let your desperation for fitting into an ideal or to improve your health actually jeopardize your health even more. And instead of that, just try to find a lifestyle that is driven by calmness and kindness in particular to yourself. Because if you are lacking nutrients and minerals, this will also lead to earlier possibilities of developing dementia or Alzheimer's. So by finding the proper nutrition for you now, by tapping into the wisdom of nutrition from ancient China or ancient India, and changing your lifestyle according to this now with the help of somebody who looks individually at you and not at your fat or your non-fat, but looks into you and your choices, then you can make a change that will last, and not a current change that will not last, but will have long-lasting side effects. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope for the longer podcast, which we are going to have with a lot of more Q&A, we will tap more into that subject. And please do me a favor, press the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment of what else we should talk concerning Ozempic, and maybe even put your individual questions there on my website, contact of www.societyofriends.de. Thank you very much. Manuela Heider de Jahnsen.